Oh boy, what a night. And what a new location to be in on a Thursday night. We're all live and in person. I don't feel like I've seen you guys all together breaking bread since like 2023. This is odd, but it's great. It's great to see you all, guys.
It's good to be
Thank
here
you for
man.
having us.
I don't think we have been. I
No,
think
I literally think we. I don't think
been together in a room.
I mean, we see you and Paul all the time on
Yeah.
Flagship City Sports. You see me from my upstairs or downstairs on Mondays, wherever the heck we are when it comes to that. But tonight, we are more than thrilled to be bringing you the Gem City Sports Podcast from the Millennium Sound Studios in Edinburgh. I want to first of all give Mark Eisert of Millennium Sound a really big thanks and shout out for having us here tonight. We hope to be doing some more shows in the future with him and with his studio, but this is a state-of-the-art facility. We've got lights, we've got sounds, we've got a camera, we've got a virtual background. Like, you know, for us, this is a step up in the world, and hopefully we just continue to grow this network and make it exciting. But guys, I'll tell you what, I'm pumped about tonight's episode, not just because of the setting, but because we're now into the nitty-gritty of football season, and we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you build up for this all year, right? I mean, you know this more than we do, Coach. I mean, everything you do is for playoffs, right? You're getting excited. We get excited for the start of the season, and it's fun to get these games going, but nothing beats playoff football.
No, and Coach, you've been a part of it for plenty of long time.
Yeah, that's you hope you're playing your best football. You hope you're healthy. You get some crisp evenings. You got frost.
Yeah,
So it's certainly just. It just feels perfect.
And it feels great, too, because you mentioned the cold weather. Like, this is the time of year, you know there's playoff football coming in Erie County because you start the season at 75 and sunny, right?
yeah.
I'm out filming games in shorts and a T-shirt, and I'm like, sipping on lemonade or whatever the heck you do on a summer night. And now I'm getting my coats out. And I realize that, and I don't know how it is for you guys. I'm sure, Coach, it's been like this for you and Nick with your kids as well. But, like, when you get to fall, you start to realize how much laundry you actually have because you have to wash your coats and wash your winter stuff. And it becomes one of those things where, like, okay, now you throw all of it in the washer at once and you'd never feel like you have any time to get any of it done.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but
you got to
that's
find everything first.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
Well, that, and then for guys like me, you have to hope it fits, from last year, right?
That's right.
See, I'll take football in this type of weather. Like, I hate those early games when you're in shorts and a polo and just sweating in the stands. I want to be in the stands with a beanie on, a hoodie, and catching some of that fall football.
Jonathan, where were you when you played?
Man, I was down south in South Carolina, but I'm not gonna lie. Like we always called it football weather when it got cold because that's when you knew you were playing for something. You were playing meaningful games.
Yeah.
When you could breathe and you could see your breath coming out of your helmet, that's how you knew you were playing good football at that point in time.
I was gonna say cold in South Carolina though. That's like 50.
I mean,
50.
Yeah.
It's probably like 85.
We dropped to the 40s a time or two every now and again. And
I don't believe you.
Busted out our hand warmers and
Get out of here.
He probably doesn't know what a frost warning is.
No. We're gonna be calling a couple. By the way, stay tuned. Jonathan and I are gonna be teaming up for some playoff games. I'm gonna have to bring extra layers for you because you're not gonna have a clue. You're gonna have no idea.
I just picture like Jonathan in a parka, just like from Christmas Story, can't put his arms down, walking
Listen,
around.
I got my bubble coat and my gloves and everything. Listen, the first year I was up here, it caught me lacking. I'm not gonna lie, I was not prepared. But year two, I had it down pat.
Yeah,
a pair of socks, plastic bags in your shoes.
Listen, no, this is the ultimate hack that we figured out. Latex gloves underneath your football gloves.
Oh, really?
That was the hack that we figured out.
I can't tell you how many times Wayne saved my ass last year in playoffs because he helped me. We were going down, we were doing the games together in our coverage for ENN, and I forgot hand warmers at least 2 weeks in a row. And I remember the one night I was standing there and I'm freezing my butt off, and Wayne just pulls out like this Walmart bag of hand warmers. You had to have like 20. You could have sold them like a lemonade stand and made $1,000 that night.
My wife, so she always packs. So I'm like, hey, but yeah, fingers are very important, especially when you're signaling. When it gets cold.
Yeah.
So got to have the appropriate handwear.
Well, luckily, now that we have our garment and weather talk out of the way. So for those of you who still don't know that we're in the fall. By the way, though, it's supposed to be in the 70s next week. So maybe get one more round of golf out there too. But, nonetheless, busy show tonight as we bring you on the air. We're going to talk a lot of high school football. It's week 9 already. We have 2 weeks left in the regular season, really the last week that all the teams are scheduled to play. Some games may not happen next week. We're going to talk GM Prep, which is, of course, the big game of the week between two rivals. And then we're going to also determine who we think the top 8 seeds in Class 3A are. Of course, everyone making predictions for 1A through 4A, 5A, 6A are determined between Prep, who's the only 5A team, and McDowell, Erie, who will play for 6A. But then we're also going to predict for 3A who we think the 8 seeds are if the season ended today, because that's always the one classification. It involves a lot of Erie County teams from Region 5, and we're trying to determine, okay, who we think is going to match up against who and what those matchups will look like come playoff time. So let's go ahead and get into the high school football preview to start things off here in our Thursday night show. Again, we're live at the Millennium Sound Studio, streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Twitch, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment where you're going to be tomorrow night and how you think the games are going to fare. Let's start with GM Cathedral Prep coach, and I'll go to you across the table for this because you've been a coach at both places, and I know the smile on your face, the smile on my face as an alum of General McLean. Whenever these two teams get together, and it's been a while, these two teams have not gotten together in some time, it's always going to be a fun matchup, but I think because of the implications for what you would call maybe a measuring stick game, right? GM's a Class 4A team, Prep's a Class 5A team. It's not going to matter for playoff implications, but I would like to assume that this, in terms of rivalry, is one that both teams are probably getting ready for a win, and I'm sure you can attest to that for GM.
Yeah, I think we're super excited for the opportunity. You don't often get a chance to step up in class and then step up in class and play someone that you aspire to be like in a lot of ways. So certainly they've set the standard here in Erie County. I had the honor and privilege to coach there for 2 years with Mike Mishler as the head coach. Mike was great to me and my family. My oldest son is a GM grad, went all the way through GM. My daughter went through GM, kindergarten through 8th, and then went to Villa Maria, had a fantastic experience. And my youngest went to GM, kindergarten through 8th, and went to Cathedral Prep and had a wonderful experience as well. So I've had kids in both schools. I live in the Edinboro community. I've been here for over 20 years. I've coached at Prep for 2 years, and this is my 3rd year at GM. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are going to be saying hello nicely tomorrow night to me, and a lot of people that aren't saying hello to me nicely tomorrow evening. But it's a great opportunity for us to see what kind of football team we have. So our kids are really excited.
And that's the wonderful thing about this rivalry. Again, everyone talks about Prep McDowell, and understandably so. They play each other every year. They're relatively close in classification and in terms of talent level. And I think this year Prep and GM are on a very similar plane as well. The thing that intrigues me most about this game is because it's two teams that going into this game are trending in opposite directions. Prep's lost 3 games in a row. They've been struggling to find their footing on offense ever since that loss to McDowell a couple of weeks back. And then meanwhile, for General McLean, Coach, you see it every day. We talk about ZZ Top all the time. Those two are essentially dominating all of District 10 so far. But for me, when I look at this game, Jonathan, and we were at the GM Meadville game last week, and one of the things we marveled about last week is that Jacob Zeitz accounted for 1 total touchdown, but yet the offense was still able to get things going despite having their number 1 option essentially off the board for a large portion of the game. So to me, I think going into this contest for GM, I wonder how much they try to get other options involved, because you have to figure come playoff time that good teams will take your best option away. And so maybe it's time to think of, okay, how do we get the secondary guys even more so involved, with Jacob Zeitz likely being targeted tomorrow night?
Well, that's definitely one of the things that we've looked at, especially talking about Isaac Zeitz, as he's been good at spreading the ball around. Like, he's been sharing the love this season. It hasn't all just been straight to Jacob. Jacob has crazy numbers, of course, but Isaac is throwing the ball. The tight end, the big athlete, I forget his name.
Jared Corwin, yeah.
He's been a big target for them, and he's a guy, if you can get the ball in his hands, he can make some plays, and he's a hard guy to bring down on an open field.
Yeah.
Like, he's good at spreading the wealth. So yeah, obviously, when you get in the playoffs, you're going to have teams game planning for you. You're going to have teams scheming to take away that ZZ Top connection, which, good luck, by the way. You can put 2 guys on him if you want to, and a jump ball is still going to be his. But there are going to be teams that do certain things to try to take him out of the game plan. But I'm not really very worried about Isaac Zeitz and his ability to get other people involved and get other people going. It's just going to take early touches, get them in a rhythm, spread the ball around early, and those guys will be off and running.
Let me ask you this. Who is this a bigger game for? And you might be a little biased in this. Is this a bigger game for GM to win, or a bigger game for Prep? You have GM coming off of a 6-game winning streak. Prep is on a 3-game losing streak. Prep is a proud football team. GM wants to keep it rolling, especially, like we were talking about before we went live, is you might have the next month off after this game. So, who needs this win more, Prep or GM?
I think it's interesting because I think the answer in terms of who needs the win more would be neither. Both teams are going to be, for Prep, it's into the sub-regional no matter what in 5A. GM's going to be the 1 seed in 4A regardless of what happens in the last 2 weeks of the season. I think we can all agree on that. I would say in terms of a rivalry component, General McLean wants this one, just in terms of knowing their history against Cathedral Prep, and they have not fared well against the Ramblers, even in the state championship winning years when they lost to Prep back in 2006. But I think if you're talking about a confidence standpoint, Prep would really love to win this game. That would snap their 3-game losing skid. If they can get the offense going back, they've scored no more than 21 points in each of their last 3 games after putting up 52 and 36 the 2 weeks before that. So I think for Prep, the big key for them is, can they get the offense back on track? The defense has not looked abysmal all season long, but they have given up some big plays, namely in the secondary, specifically against Benedictine. They gave up a couple of long touchdown passes, let the offense get behind them. And so I think for the Ramblers, just from a consistency factor, you got to come into this game and expect that you can get back on track. Even if you don't necessarily win, you'd like to say, look, we can have the consistency, because as you mentioned, Nick, if you have potentially a month off, and we've seen this with Prep teams in previous years, it is hard for any team, regardless of whether you're Prep, McDowell, GM, Fairview, you name it, to have that much time off of football and then be expected to go out and win a state playoff game, Wayne, in what might be 30-degree temperatures.
Yeah, we experienced that in my first couple of years at Prep with COVID, right? The one year we had, we planned on playing a game, and on a Thursday afternoon, we got the call that the game was postponed. We were moving forth. The next week, we got the call while we were loading the bus on Friday, and then we showed up to play Pine Richland at Hershey Park. So, it's difficult to simulate what other teams are doing, and it's difficult to, practice hard that deep in the season, because you want to make sure that you're not beating each other up. So you have to be very smart and manage your time. The days get shorter, the lights are on. You're sharing the facilities with other teams. It's playoff time. You don't know what kind of field time you have. It's a very delicate balance on doing too much or too little.
Let's talk about the key matchup in this game. And Coach, I know that you're, of course, going to be focusing on for Prep is the running game and the quarterback play. Davin Friedman has been the consistent starter now ever since going out early in the season with an injury. But I'll start with a key, and I'll start with maybe somebody that you're not necessarily, in a position group you're not necessarily looking at. Wayne's going to love this too, is up front in the battle in the trenches. We saw if there is an area where Prep is vulnerable, besides maybe the secondary in the last couple of weeks, it's been up front. And McDowell really did that. They bullied him with Stephon Porter a few weeks back when McDowell got that win. They attacked on the ground. They made it really difficult for Prep to A, rotate guys in, and then B, find their footing on the front 7 of things. So if General McLean's able to run the ball with consistency, and then not only that, also bully on the defensive line, as you mentioned, with Jared Corwin and the like. So I think that's going to be a big component of the matchup as well. And I just think early is going to be key too. The last thing you want to do if you're these two teams is get anybody injured. But I also think too, just for the pride standpoint, both these squads are going to want to win the game, Jonathan. And what I think is going to be the biggest factor early on is just like the GM Meadville game. Do we see either of these two teams take deep shots early on? Or do you save your bag of tricks for the playoffs? Or do you say, we're going to let it all out here? I think that's going to be a big key as well.
It's like, for me, I don't think you can show your full hand, but at the same time, you still have to go win the game. And I think this is a game that both teams want to win. The question was asked earlier, who needs this game more, or who is this game more important to? I would say it probably, like, feelings wise, means more to GM. GM wants to go up, get the win against a higher classification rival. It's a big game for them, and they're going to be up to play that game. But as far as who needs it, I think Prep needs it more than GM needs it for the same points that you were making. A confidence standpoint, you've lost 3 straight, you're 5-3. You turn that into a 4-game skid. Now you're sitting 1 game above 500 going into the Farrell game.
Yeah.
Your season looks a lot different, and your season outlook looks a lot different going into the playoffs than if you go in sitting at 6-3 going into Farrell, potentially going 7-3 into the playoffs.
Even your confidence level, right? To say like, oh, we just beat GM, who's a powerhouse. Everybody knows that they're one of the top teams in D10 right now. So you can come out of that win, stop that 3-game losing skid against a big win against GM, a rival game. I love the way you put that. I think GM wants it more. I think Prep needs it more. It's a great way to put it.
It's going to be a great game. Wayne's going to be there. He's going to be on the sideline. I'm going to be there filming. Jonathan might be there with me as well. Nick, if you want to join, feel free. It's a party. I don't know what you got going on Friday night. You probably got more important things than hanging out with us two guys. But
listen, 3rd and 4th grade football is over, so I have a little more free time.
Oh, how'd they do, by the way, this season?
Undefeated champions, baby.
Right.
So in about what 6-7 years, GM's going to have an even bigger powerhouse. Is what you're saying?
I'll tell you, this 3rd, 4th grade team, it was crazy. I don't know if they pull plays from McCormick or not, but they're running reverses and double reverses and read options, and I'm like, this kid's in 4th grade. I mean, they ran it really well. It was fun to watch.
I think the nice thing is that with the staff we have, Marshall's done a great job of creating some continuity. So, our junior high, our middle school, our youth are all running the same thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was impressive, man.
Blueprint,
It was
So,
impressive.
I mean, when I think of that, I think of Wilmington, right? 1A school, and their birth, they know how to run the wing tee. They come out and they run buck trap and belly. But those teams, they just every year you're just in awe of the execution.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're 9th graders, 10th graders. You watch them and you're like, wow.
That becomes muscle memory.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, and our PA folks watching this are not going to know this team name, but if anybody from back home in South Carolina is tuned in, it takes me straight to a team that I played my senior year in the state championship, Abbeville Panthers, and quite literally their offensive scheme is called the A-bone. It's like a mix of shotgun, but it's like flex bone offense. It's their own little crazy twist. And they literally run the same exact plays from Pee-wee football to middle school to JV to freshman to varsity. They've won 12 state championships in the state of South Carolina between 1A and 2A.
Oh, my goodness.
Blueprint, especially for small town high school football. If you can get these kids on board and get them learning the scheme and learning the systems early, it's muscle memory, like you said, by the time they get to high school, and they have chemistry playing with all of these same guys.
Yeah.
It's wonderful when you can see a town and a community get behind it and all put it all together, because it makes for great varsity football when they get of age.
Oh, yeah.
And to Coach's point, typically the programs that are the standout ones, and Jonathan, you mentioned it at your hometown, those are the programs that have that instilled confidence and instilled, if you will, curriculum in the kids in the first couple of years that they start playing football. And that's really going to be huge. GM Prep coming up on Friday night. That is probably, in terms of a watching perspective, the biggest game of the week. But there are other big games too. And this is where we're segueing, guys, our preview for week number 9 into this. This time of year, there's always conversations and discussions as to what the seeding should be, who should be the top teams in each classification. Luckily for us, 4A, 5A, 6A are pretty much decided. We know in 4A, it's going to be GM, Meadville, and then Franklin, Oil City if they take 4 teams in some order. 3 and 4. 5A is Prep. They're the only team. And then 6A is McDowell, Erie just by default. We'll get to 1A, 2A a little bit later on another podcast, but I want to go and talk about the 3A seeding discussion. As we look at some of the teams that are from Erie County, some of the teams that are in the surrounding area, because this is the one classification, Coach, and having coached at GM the last couple of years, that this is always the one class that seems to be the biggest question mark as to who's going to be in what seed. You have the Mercer County powerhouses, and you go from there. But the one thing that I think, Coach, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, last 2 years you were a part of it with General McLean. You knew it was kind of one of those things where you had to kind of wait and see. I think this is probably, maybe outside of the top 2 seeds, which we'll get to in a second, the most competitive field in terms of battling for the 3 through 8 seeds that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of good teams and a lot of teams playing good football this year. So, the competitive balance has been great, and it's been great to see some different teams, vying, for the lead, like Corey. So I don't know if you want to segue into that, but Corey's a great story at 6-2. And Jeff Goodwill has done a tremendous job. And the most interesting thing about the Corey Harbor Creek game is opposing styles, right? Harbor Creek is a wing T team, a run first team. Corey is, relies on the pass, can certainly run the football, but they want to throw the ball, and they want to throw the ball down the field, and they've been very successful doing it. So when you talk about that game, it's those first 2 possessions, right?
Yeah.
If Harbor Creek gets the ball and eats 4 or 5 minutes off the clock and can establish a run and score first, they definitely have the upper hand. If Corey scores first and gets to 2-score lead with a passing offense, and Harbor Creek not having a great passing offense, or not that being their first priority, those first 4, 5, 6 minutes of the game are very important, I think.
I would make an argument that before we even get into the seeding, that Corey Harbor Creek is the most important game of the week where 3A is concerned. For Corey, of course, you want to keep your high seed potential, but then for Harbor Creek, Nick, you're probably battling just to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just sitting in Region 5, right? They're 2-2 in league, 4-4 overall. I think, we talk about who needs wins more, and I think Harbor Creek absolutely needs this win if they have any hope of making it into the playoffs. And I think for Corey, I do think seeding matters. I think they've been playing hot. I said on our show Monday that they have a team that I've kind of kept my eye on all year. They started out great, had a couple impressive wins, maybe worked through some kinks in the middle, and now have been on a roll. And that offense is humming. And I don't know that I haven't been in Erie as long as you guys, but to me, every time I ever watched a Corey game, it was more of a ground and pound style. And now you're seeing them spread the ball out. It's not like GM where you have that ZZ Top connection, but they're throwing it all over the place. Anybody's catching the ball. It's not like it's, a 1-2 punch between a quarterback and a receiver. So I think, you were kind of talking about earlier, is Harbor Creek battling for the playoff spot? Yeah, absolutely. This is a must-win game for them.
And to your point, for Corey, they're doing it with different guys. I mean, Mason Savitz had 2 touchdowns all year coming into last game. He scores 2 in the air and a pick 6 as well. So Corey's rolling. We're going to get to them in a second. But let's start at the top, guys. I don't think there's really any question mark as to the top 2 seeds. I think we can all agree, hands up, Sharon, Hickory are probably 1, 2. I would put Sharon 1, Hickory 2, just because of the head-to-head win for Sharon over Hickory.
Yeah.
No
argument here.
I agree. Look what they did to Meadville.
Yeah.
Up here as a 4A school. So, they've been dominant.
And Sharon,
always dominant.
Sharon and Hickory, man, Hickory's had GM's number the last few seasons before GM moved up to 4A. That is in all likelihood, unless one of these 2 teams mess up, it's what you pencil in for the District 10 title game. What was the District 10 title game last season? Hickory ended up winning that one. Sharon's only lost to Cathedral Prep in week number 2. They've won 6 games in a row. Hickory's only losses to Sharon, and since that loss to Sharon, they've won 4 straight. So 1 6-point loss. So I think we can agree Sharon, Hickory 1-2. I don't think anything's going to change from that. Maybe the committee goes another way. I don't see it. Then you get to 3-4. And just, this is in my opinion, this is in my book, I think the only 2 teams you can consider for 3-4 would be Corey and Titusville. When you look at the way that these 2 teams have played, Titusville have rattled off some big wins. They dominated Grove City early in the year. They're sitting at 6-2. They have that win over GC. They shut out Slippery Rock last week. They beat Conneaut, who's another 3A team. The only really bad losses they have is to Corey early in the season in week number 1. And then the aforementioned Beaver sitting at 6-2. They just shut out Fairview. Would you consider any other teams here for 3-4 guys, or is this kind of the question mark that we have where it's Corey or Titusville? You got to kind of take your pick. What say you guys with the 3 and 4 seeds potentially?
I feel like you can't go any other way than Corey and Titusville, just because overall record they're both sitting at 6-2, and that's kind of the only thing that's what separates them between, say, like a Fairview or a Fort LaBeouf, is that overall record, where you're looking at the rest of the teams in is it Region 4, and the next best record after Titusville is 3-5 overall.
Yeah,
like that. Those 2 teams are the only 2 teams that come close. But honestly, when you look at entire complete body of work, also you have to take into account health of all teams involved, and whether or not a team like Fort LaBeouf or a team like Fairview will be at full strength when both of them are missing their quarterback. I don't think they can really have that strong of an argument for one of those 3 or 4 seeds.
And Corey is 6 inches from being 7-1.
Yeah.
So when you think about, the game that they played against Fort LaBeouf, and again, in horrible conditions, really the deep ball that was thrown there, I was watching the film because we played him the next one. I thought he was in. So
Right.
They are a call away from being 7-1. So I think they have, the better quality wins. And if you want to say the better quality loss, they're a stone's throw from 7-1.
Well, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but if you eliminate Newcastle game, I would imagine that Corey was your toughest game on the GM schedule in District 10, if you exclude Newcastle. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, absolutely correct. I mean, it was a great football game, a challenging football game, mentally, physically. They're a very good football team, very disciplined, don't take many penalties, play good special teams. So the day after when you played them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're Corey and you're hearing this discussion and you keep hearing Corey Titusville, hey, we got the head-to-head. We played these guys and beat them. Granted, it was week 1 early in the season, and a lot of things changed from week 1 to week 10, but the result is the result. They got the win against those guys. So if it's a toss-up between those teams, it's who goes higher. If you're Corey, you have a pretty solid argument.
Well, and I think Corey, they're going to finish out against Harbor Creek and Oil City. I think you can probably lock them in at 3 or 4. My fear for Titusville is your last 2 games are against Sharon and then home against Fairview. So those are 2 big games to finish out the season. If they lose one of those games, I do think there is space for maybe, depending on how Fort LaBeouf finishes, or, if Fairview is still riding hot and they beat Titus for the last game of the season, that could be the 4th seed right there. I don't know that Titusville is going to – they could very well lose to Sharon. I think it might come down to that Fairviews depending on that 4th seed.
Well, and I think another big part of it, and we'll get to the lower seeds in a second too, is if Corey and Titusville both finish 1-1, that probably won't flip-flop the seeds. I think we all think Corey right now is in the driver's seat with a head-to-head win at the 3rd seed. And keep in mind, there are so many criteria that District 10 puts into place when it comes to determining playoff teams. I don't even know all of them, to be quite honest with you.
We have a comprehensive list.
Whether it's head-to-head, whether it's the games that you've played against classifications above or below you, whether it's your record in region, your record against common opponents, there are just so many criteria. I think the easiest one, though, for Corey Titusville is, look, they played head-to-head. Corey got the win. I understand it's week 1, but you have to factor that in. So right now, as we see it as a panel, it's Corey 3, it's Titusville 4, with Sharon and Hickory the top 2 seeds. Then you get chaos. And I will start my conversation with 5 through 8 with this. If the District 10 committee does this by the book, we should see an Erie County team at the 5 seed. I don't know if that's necessarily how it's going to go.
Y'all make this D-10 committee sound like this college football playoff committee, man.
And look, I understand their job is difficult, right? It's never easy to be able to seed playoff teams, but to me, you have to question a couple of things. And I think the only reason that Fairview or Fort LaBeouf here wouldn't be considered for the 4 or 5 for the 5 or 5 seed, if you will, is because of their injuries, whether it's Vinny Campoli, Fort LaBeouf's offense, and their starting quarterback. Because the 3 teams that I would consider for the 5 seed would be Fort LaBeouf, Fairview, and I guess Grove City. I personally do not see how Grove City could be the 5 seed, even if they win this week. They'd be 4-5. They play Conneaut tomorrow night. But what say you? I want to hear the panel discussion on this, because this is a big game for whoever gets the 5 seed, because it's going to probably be against Titusville. All 3 of these teams are tough teams. Who would you put at 5, guys? If the season ended today, and even if you're predicting the rest of the year, who's the 5 seed in your mind, Nick? I'll start with you.
That's a tough one. And it's because I still kind of stand by what I said earlier when I think about the shakeup at 3-4. I'm not saying Titusville will lose those last 2 games, but let's say for the sake of argument, they go 1-1, like you said, and we end up with Sharon, Hickory, Titusville, Corey. I think that 5th seed, if Fairview pulls out a win over the next 2 weeks, I do kind of see them being at that 5th seed. Fort LaBeouf, I think their defense has been strong, but that offense has been slugging since the loss of their starting quarterback. And I think Fairview, their backup quarterback, his name escapes me right now, but they've been moving the ball a little bit still. They kind of had to figure it out a little bit, but I think I'm more confident in Fairview over Fort LaBeouf. So I probably, if going with the top 4 that we have, I probably slot Fairview in there.
Wayne, you've been around this a long time.
Yeah, Fort LaBeouf went down and beat Grove City
without
a quarterback, without completing a pass.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that Fairview beat Grove City as
well. See, that's the other component. Each of these teams has beaten one and lost to the other. Grove City has a win over Fairview and a loss to LaBeouf. LaBeouf has a win over Grove City and a loss to Fairview. Fairview, of course, beat LaBeouf, and they've lost to Grove City.
Right.
So it's kind of the head-to-head eliminates each other.
Right.
But again, the quality of win, to your point.
Yeah, and
I've never seen the Spider-Man meme of everybody pointing at each other. that's these 3 teams right now pointing at each other as far as region standings go.
Yeah,
and Grove City is going to get the 5 seed on reputation if they get the 5 seed.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, we scrimmage them, and it's not the same Grove City team, that it's been. And Sam Mallory does a great job. So no disrespect there, but
they're a great program.
I think, Fort LaBeouf and or Fairview at this particular time, is more deserving, of that 5 seed this year. But again, reputation, where they've gone is certainly going to matter as well.
Jonathan, I'll leave the floor to you, and then I'll make a pitch for my situation here. But who would you have in the 5 if you had to make an argument?
I don't see how you don't go Fairview. I'm with you in saying I don't see how Grove City even has a shot with their overall record and their region record. I feel like they've kind of played themselves out of it. I don't see how you don't go with Fairview when you just take into account head-to-head matchup. You saw what these teams could do late in the season, towards the end of the season, both of them dealing with the same quarterback injuries. And you saw who came out on top in that game, and it was Fairview in a 10-0 slugfest.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, and then looking at Fort LaBeouf's schedule, you've got Girard, and you end the season with Mercyhurst Prep, who that's not going to be an easy game for you at all.
No way.
They're
not the way they're playing.
Not the way they're rolling right now. So you have to be able to get out of the rest of your schedule to even have an argument. And I don't want to say that I'm making a prediction that Fort LaBeouf is going to lose that game, but that's going to be a tough game to finish out and win and finish out this season 2-0 to even put yourself in position to have that argument.
I think it's very interesting because I'm with you guys that to me Fairview has the best path to be able to get there to the 5 seed. The one thing I would say to Wayne's point about the quality of games, common opponent, right? Fort LaBeouf, Fairview, and Grove City. Fairview is the only team of those 3 who did not allow an offensive touchdown to either opponent. They shut out Fort LaBeouf. The one Grove City touchdown was scored on a 93-yard fumble recovery. So Fairview's defense is the only one that didn't allow an offensive touchdown. So if you're factoring in the head-to-head at all, which I guess you really can't because these teams have had a merry-go-round, then Fairview's defense is the one that's been the best of the 3. I will say this. If every team is on a level playing field, I think in terms of right now they're even for the 5 seed. Outside of reputation, I think Grove City is the one team that doesn't have the potential resume builder. They have Conneaut coming up on Friday. It is a 3-8 team, but they're going to finish at best 4-5. They've lost 4 games in a row. One, of course, to Fort LaBeouf, who they'd be facing in that conversation. Oil City, Sharon, and Hickory. They have had to play Sharon and Hickory the last 2 games, but again, you have to play who's on their schedule. The one thing that I think will be very interesting with the D-10 committee, let's assume it's Corey Titusville in the 3-4, right? Would you want to see the same 2 teams play in back-to-back weeks? Because that is what you would get if Fairview's the 5 seed. They played Titusville in the last week of the season. I think it could be intriguing, to be quite honest with you. If you get a close game, even one that comes down to a 1-possession game in the 4th quarter, I think you probably could, in all likelihood, go with Fairview and Titusville again. But one way or another, you're going to be sitting there saying, okay, we have to pick who's had the most quality of a schedule. I think Fairview and Fort LaBeouf, to me, are the 2 ones that win that argument out, and then Fairview's got the win over LaBeouf. I would then go with probably LaBeouf 6 and Grove City 7. But I think at the end of the day, really the 5 seed is the biggest key to me because in all respect, I don't know if any of the 3 teams we just mentioned can beat Corey at this point in time.
If we're seeding teams because we don't want 2 teams to play back-to-back and back-to-back weeks, that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's a problem.
That shouldn't be a part of the criteria that no one knows exactly what's on the criteria. I know that shouldn't be on it.
Right.
Especially if it's like you said, if it's a close game at the end of the year, run it back, sell some tickets.
Yeah.
Well, and at the end of the day, Titusville and Fairview could say, hey, look, we're just not going to play week 10. District 10 committee, we're going to basically pigeonhole you into a point where you have to play us in the playoffs. You could do that if you really wanted to. Not that they're going to do that, but that's on the table.
You don't want to strong arm the committee. I don't think that works out well.
8 seed.
Exactly.
So then the big question becomes the 8 seed, and I think really the 2 teams that I look at would be Conneaut and Harbor Creek. I think Conneaut's definitely going to have to beat Grove City coming up tomorrow if they want to have a chance. Is there any way, I guess, guys, the question would be that Harbor Creek doesn't get in as the 8? Because I think that they've been able to have at least quality games enough. They're 4-4. They may have a 500 record by the end of the year. I think the Huskies, though they're not going to match up well with Sharon or Hickory, they've been an underrated, decent team this year just in terms of their defense and how they're able to work. Yeah,
and I think they've gotten better each week.
Yeah.
They had a quality win against Oil City, a 4A school early. Right. Played a tough first half against us. I think we're 2-2 at one point.
Yeah, 2-2 before the loss to Mercyhurst Prep. Then they've won 2 of their last 3.
Yeah, so I think they've really gotten it together. And remember, it's a new staff, and it's a new offense. So again, they're playing their best football, late in the year. We always talk about that, and they're relatively healthy. And they got a big fullback, they got a great tailback, and when it gets cold and the hammer starts coming down,
Get behind that fullback.
when you start tackling guys, those arms feel like glass shattering every time. So you get a toughness. So certain teams are built to play in this particular weather in Northwest PA, and they are.
And I mean, looking at their schedule, like they've been competitive in all of their losses. Sans the GM loss, 9 to Fairview, by 6 to Mercyhurst Prep, by 4 to LaBeouf. Like they've been in all of these games, and they've been a competitive football team in the games that they've lost. So it looks better on their resume, some of these losses to good teams, because they're right there with them.
Yeah, I think if they go 1-1 to finish the season, I think they're the 8 for sure.
And the other thing too, and I'll maybe when I get your perspective on this, because you've seen a lot of good coaches come through District 10. To me, it's pretty easy to see early on if a coach is going to work in high school or doesn't. John Anger is going to work at Harbor Creek. If he stays there for even a few years, he's got that program in the right direction. And he just seems like a guy who screams what that program is, right? You talked about the run game and how they're a tough physical team. I think John Anger is going to work at Harbor Creek. I think you're going to see the Huskies rolling really well the next few years.
Yeah, I think you have to find someone that fits your community, your culture, and the type of kids you have, right? So, and I think, Harbor Creek was in the eye for many years. I questioned it myself when they went to Wing T. I was like, wow, to me early on, you take, the tailback who was getting it 28 times, and now he's 1 of 3, so he's getting a third of the carries. Thank you, because he did his damage to us in 2023, right? Especially early on. So, but you have to find your identity and find different ways to get him the ball. They've got him the ball in the passing game, and they've gotten that together. But no question that he's a community guy, and he'll fit right in.
Any final thoughts, guys, on the seating, besides the fact that it's given us heart palpitations here? I just wanted to play a sound.
Yeah, you just wanted to touch some
this.
buttons,
I don't have the ZZ Top 1 on here, but I do have it on.
That's
here.
all right. I'll have them next week. Don't worry. I'll have them all ready to go for next week.
I would say this: it might be the most competitive playoff field in a long time.
Yeah.
Some of those 1-8, 2-7s. I don't think there's any gimmies. And I know Sharon and Hickory are the class, right? They're a step above, but I don't know if there's that much separation that there's been in the past, especially 3 through 8, to your point. So, that 3-4, that 5, those games are going to be very, very competitive, and you're going to see some surprises, I think, in that class in those early games.
Well, and I think the other thing, too, to keep in mind, you mentioned the cold weather. That behooves well for running teams. Harbor Creek, if they do get that 8 seed, who knows? They ground and pound. They hold time of possession. They give Sharon maybe a run for their money. And then I think even in the semifinal games, even if it's the top 4 seeds that move on, and you're looking at Sharon, Titusville, who have to play, and then you look at a Hickory versus Corey game, Beavers can score with anyone. So, again, like to your point, Wayne, you never know. I think it would be extremely intriguing by our predictions here to see a Mercer County versus Mercer County first round if it is Hickory and Grove City, because that would be an intriguing game. And that's just it. That's how you get different champions from different classifications, is if you get an upset in the first round. So 3 is going to be a lot of fun. Playoffs are going to be a lot of fun in general, and they come here in 2 weeks with Week 10 happening next week. But the big games that could be deciding of seeding will end on Friday night. So that's your high school football. A lot to get to tomorrow night. Of course, we have a podcast coming up. I don't know if your game's going to end in time, Wayne, but maybe you can call in. But we're going to be doing high school football.
I don't know. I'd pay to watch you eat wings on there again. That was good. That was good comedy for me.
By the way,
jealous.
My wife's not happy with me.
I was jealous. I was like, man, I want some wings.
By the way, shout out to Engine House. I actually went back. Jonathan and I took the rest of that food home. I went back and ordered those wings. And I'm not a spicy
They were
guy.
very good.
So good.
I'm not a spicy guy at all, but those things were awesome.
I'm not either, but I took a couple home, and yeah, they didn't make it.
Stay tuned, by the way. We still might be doing some more live episodes at different places as we continue along on the Gem City Sports Podcast from the Millennium Sound Studio for the first time ever here in Edinburgh. Isaac Pekyash, Nick Artman, Jonathan Williams, Coach Wayne Bradford joining us on the pod. We've gotten 40 minutes in with high school football talk. Now let's talk the NFL, because we haven't even gotten to huge news that the Browns are moving to Brook Park Oh, wait, that's not the biggest news of the week for them?
I don't know. It might be. Did you see? Speaking of that story, by the way, sorry, fun little side. Did you see the mayor of Cleveland threw the team under the bus?
No, what'd he say?
He was like, "Oh no, that was their decision. We had nothing to do with that." He was like, "I'm passing the buck. You throw all that hate to the Browns. I had nothing to do with this."
Like it's a disappointing decision and the whole 9 yards because they wanted to keep it in the city limits.
I thought the biggest news was Art Modell getting his shot at the Hall of Fame.
That's right. I didn't even think about that.
No, I didn't either. That got buried.
As a Raven, I think, right?
Yeah.
Only a Raven. They still own Cleveland, and Cleveland's back in downtown, I guess, for the next 5 years, and that's about it.
No one is going to go to a dome stadium in Cleveland. They'll boycott it.
I believe it. I mean, why you wonder why Buffalo stayed with open air?
Yeah,
Those fans would have torn the dome off like
how many
Hurricane Milton
Cleveland people
tore
are going
down
to go to a
Tropicana
Taylor
Field.
Swift Eras tour? If that's what you're looking for your $4 million in revenue and dome, you got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Ozzy Osbourne's getting inducted this weekend. Maybe he should,
There you go.
sing
There
the
you go.
national anthem or something. In Cleveland, but
Maybe they can suit him up to play quarterback. He'd be better than what's going on.
I thought it was amazing in terms of, you talk about culture and fit and cold weather, and I mean Pittsburgh is not having a dome.
No.
Buffalo's not having a dome. Cleveland people are going to be like, huh?
Yeah.
It just sucks because everybody wants to set themselves up to host a Super Bowl. That's what all of this is about. Everybody wants to be able to put in a bid, and at this point, with the big wigs that you have coming to Super Bowls instead of regular football fans at this point, nobody's going to Super Bowl in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, or
well, and that's what it's all about too. Like 100%, and that's exactly like you're talking about the Eras tour too. It's not about the Browns; it's about making money and all the other stuff. Browns
I think
fans,
Jerry Jones would much rather have a better football team playing in a Super Bowl in another town than hosting Super Bowls.
Yes.
Apparently, he wants someone else asking him questions.
I was going to say, I don't even know if he knows he's still GM of a football team, but that's a conversation.
By the way, is there an open application to have him on shows? Because we're available. I'm not sure we're going to ask any more softballs than the other show did, but hey, we're on the table, Jerry.
He can fire us too.
Oh, I mean, like we're not really fireable.
Right, I'm sorry. I got us off.
No, this is great. This is what you do when you get 4 guys locked up in a room for an hour and a half here. The Amari Cooper trade goes, of course, to Buffalo. Buffalo giving back a couple of picks in return, in case you didn't know. And now the Bills have a de facto number 1 wide receiver. I want to talk about this in the way of Buffalo, because I think for Cleveland, and we'll get to them in a second, it's essentially the brakes are off and the train is rolling down the tracks in bad manner for Cleveland. But does this move for Buffalo reinsert them back into the Super Bowl conversation? Were they already in it? Are they out of it? What about this trade, guys, in your mind? What does it do for Buffalo? And does it put them back at the top of the AFC again?
Top of the AFC, I think, is tough.
Close to the top.
Top of their division? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah, they could win 8 games this year and win their division.
Hey, listen, I won't stand for this Devontae Adams hate. I think it's a great trade for Buffalo. It makes 100% sense. Keon Coleman does not yet look like the wide receiver 1 in an offense. I think he'll be a great wide receiver 2. So you put Cooper opposite of Coleman, and then you get Shakir back in the slot, and you have Kincaid running the other side. I think that makes that offense deadly again. So I don't know that makes them Super Bowl favorites. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of injuries on that defense that makes me a little nervous about claiming Super Bowl run. But this offense is going to be a lot more fun to watch.
Yeah, their offense is going to be lethal. And if they weren't already, which they were already at the top of that division, this all but seals it for them, in my opinion. Giving them a true number 1 receiver, or as close as you're going to get to a true number 1 receiver, when they've been desperately needing one. In the last couple of games, we've kind of been noticing how glaring it is that they don't have one.
Yeah.
And Keon Coleman hasn't turned into that number 1 option that you might have wanted him to be when you drafted him. Giving them that was the one weakness they had on offense, honestly. They're running the ball really well. They throw the ball to their running backs really well. Like you were saying, they get the ball to their tight ends really well. And they're spreading the wealth as far as their number 2 options at receiver and getting the ball to a lot of these different guys. Give them that number 1 target where on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, Josh Allen has somebody he can look at and say, okay, you're going to give me a first down every time. That offense becomes lethal.
Yeah.
I'll take a different approach.
Oh, okay.
I'll say no.
Okay.
I'll say it adds pressure.
Oh, okay.
Oh, see, I think it takes it off.
And I'll say to Jonathan's point, now he's going to be looking for Amari Cooper. Now the interceptions go up.
Okay.
Now he locks in, and I think that the thing that with Diggs not being there that made them so successful early on was no prima donna, no number one. Everybody's getting 3 or 4 catches. Everybody's getting a touchdown here or there.
Yeah.
And Josh can just scan the field and throw. Now I got to throw it to Cooper. Do
you think Cooper's going to demand those targets like Diggs?
No, I don't think he's going to demand it, but I think certainly the fans are going to say, hey, why
and the
are you throwing it
presence
to
on
Cooper?
the field. Right.
I mean, you didn't go out and get him to not catch the ball.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's a double-edged sword there, I mean, I think Amari Cooper is a great football player, and he's probably a really unselfish player.
Yeah.
But I think it adds pressure, to Allen. And now, to your point, everybody's saying it's Super Bowl or bust. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
We were going to win the division because the division's not very good. But now, if I don't win the Super Bowl because you gave me this toy, what if the toy's broken?
well, I mean, it's looked broken in the first few weeks. I'm going to give you applause for that, Wayne, because I actually have a different take on the same lines as what you said. I don't necessarily think it puts more pressure on Josh Allen, but I wonder if this changes Joe Brady's philosophy. The thing that is most concerning to me, and we saw this last year right before Ken Dorsey got fired, when you have a stud receiver on the field, even to Nick's point, if he's not demanding the targets, you feel like as an OC, you have to change your perspective, change your play sheet, change your calls on certain downs so that you can get the ball, whether it's to Cooper or not, to wide receivers. Because there's some inherent pressure, I'm sure, for Joe Brady that, look, we traded for this guy. We did give up draft capital. We did give up draft capital for him because our wide receiver room hasn't been great. We have to make that look good. And so I think what it does is it puts pressure on Joe Brady to make sure you continue to run the football, which you had been doing effectively. I worry that this takes James Cook out of the equation in a lot of ways and makes him less desirable, even though to me he's still having the best season that he's certainly had in Buffalo and further. So I think it puts more pressure on Joe Brady because then you ask yourself the question, is he going to be able to keep doing the sort of offensive things with the run game that he has been, or is it just going to throw him for a loop? Because it did with Ken Dorsey, with Stephon Diggs. And if he's not careful, I think it could with Joe Brady in Buffalo.
One of the things that's interesting about them acquiring him, though, is that, like, normally when you go out and get a big name target, you have a price tag over your head. You spent X amount of money to get this guy here, so you feel the need to get on the ball. You feel the need to get a return on your investment. They're paying league minimum. They're not getting him for very much. So if he comes in and he's just another guy in the building and he's just a guy that attracts an extra safety every now and again on third downs and frees up your other guys, but he's not quite that number one dominant target, demanding all of the receptions, demanding all the targets. If he comes in and he just blends into this offense, it could really work wonders for opening some of these other guys up because you don't have that price tag over his head. The Browns paid him everything up front with the restructured deal in the offseason. So you don't have a price tag and that in the back of your head from ownership is, okay, we got to get this guy involved. We got to get this guy involved. He could very well just walk into the building, be another guy, and just help elevate the offense without doing too much.
Well, and I think because of the type of receiver he is, I'm with you. Like if this would have been Devontae Adams, I'm 100% with Coach Bradford because of that. Adams is that type of receiver that like demands those end zone catches. He doesn't necessarily with his mouth, but with his play style, he's going to take those. I think Cooper is more. He's an excellent route runner. He's always been said to have one of the best hands in the league. I think he plays that complement role, and I think he'll. Again, just knowing who he was and how he fits into that offense, that's where I'm with you, Jay. The rumor was they were in on Adams before Adams got sent to the Jets. Adams goes to the Jets. They go ahead and come back to Cleveland and offer them the 3rd round pick or whatever it was for him. But yeah, I agree. I think because of the style of receiver he is, I think he'll be okay.
And a chance to make his debut on Sunday and a good team to do it against the Tennessee Titans who have been struggling. Let's pick this game, gents. Bills and Titans. We do this every Thursday with NFL predictions. I'll start since I'm talking here right now. To me, I think this has to be a game for Buffalo. By the way, they're home for the first time in what feels like 3 years. I haven't been to Highmark Stadium since it was like June, I feel like. So I'm going to finally...
It was Ralph Wilson.
Yeah, since it was Ralph Wilson, right. And since the new stadium wasn't even thought of yet. To me, I think this is a game where Buffalo completely dominates, and I think they really have to. Despite the win against the Jets on Monday, I think that win showcased a lot of major flaws for Buffalo, namely their inability to be able to cash in off of Jets miscues. They didn't do so very well. I just think this is a 34-17 type of game. I think their defense feasts, and they're starting to get a little healthier. And also, too, for the Bills here, you have a chance to now go 2 up on the Jets again. If the Jets can't win in Pittsburgh, I think it's ultimately Buffalo who's going to get this done 34-17. I'll turn the floor to you, Jonathan, and I'll reset the camera so we can see your pick.
For me, I don't think this should be a very close game at all. Like you said, the Titans haven't been playing very well. Their yards per game is near the bottom of the league. Their points per game is near the bottom of the league. Offensively, they just haven't been getting it done. I'm going to lopsided score too. I'm going to go 35-14.
Coach Bradford.
Yeah, Buffalo, definitely. Tennessee's just not a very good football team and hasn't figured it out. Turnover machine. I think the front four, Buffalo, turnovers. Yeah. I'll say a little bit closer. I'll go 31-21.
I don't think Tennessee has a prayer. I think if Tennessee wins this game, I'm jumping ship and I'm joining Coach Bradford that Cooper was a bad decision, because that is sound the alarms if they lose this game. Will Levis makes Kenny Pickett look good, and Levis is just
a bold take.
Woo, boy. Just not spreading the ball around. Tony Pollard's going to have to run a ton in this game, and coming up against the Bills, because the Bills are so good. That means the Titans are going to have to throw a lot, and that is not a recipe for success for them. The over-under set at 41. This is going to be a low-scoring affair, because once the Bills get up by 10, I think they roll the rest of the game. Me, I'm terrible at picking scores, so I'll go Buffalo by 10.
Yeah, but all 4 of us have the Bills winning. I don't think it's very competitive. Speaking of alarm bells,
who gave this guy the button?
Let's go to the other side of the Amari Cooper trade with the Cleveland Browns. I think this is them waving the white flag on the season. I really do. I mean, this is a team right now that's sitting at 1-5. They're about to be 1-6 when we get to picks in a second, and they end up losing to the Cincinnati Bengals coming up this Sunday. But I just foreshadowed my pick here. I wonder what has to be in the mind of Kevin Stefanski right now. You have a 2-time Coach of the Year who clearly can't pick the quarterback that he wants to start, that now has no weapons at wide receiver. And now you have a running back in Nick Chubb, who I understand he put the letter out to Cleveland saying, this is my home. I don't know why you would want to come back this season if you're Nick Chubb. I mean, I guess, and I'll start with you, Coach, on this, because my head's in a tizzy with thinking about this team. Where do you go from here? I mean, you've been a part of teams that have at times struggled and have had to build back up. What's the first point of attack if you're Cleveland right now to try to salvage the season?
Well, in the locker room, guys like Myles Garrett, and I'm going to say his name wrong, tight end.
Njoku.
Yeah.
Njoku. Those guys have to get in the locker room and they have to say, hey, look, we're professionals. We've got pride. We got no one's going to right this ship. Unless it's us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Cleveland is going to play great this weekend and beat Cincinnati.
Okay.
So Myles Garrett is going to take control of the game. Nick Chubb's going to come back, and they're going to be super motivated. And now Deshaun Watson will probably play the game of his life without Amari Cooper
that would be
this weekend. So he will break his 0-for-26 third down streak. And great things happen in the game of football, mysteries. And, I just think there's no other place for Cleveland to go. They can't go any lower. And there's so much outside the locker room that those guys inside are going to say enough's enough.
And they don't look like they've given up yet.
No.
Like you watch them play, they haven't given up. Watson may have, but the team hasn't given up yet. So I could see that.
Well, it's just so fascinating to me because clearly Deshaun shouldn't be starting. And I think that's got to be the frustration inside the locker room is you have a lot of guys who won't go out and say it publicly, knowing that they can win football. And that to me, I was having a conversation with my brother, and maybe I said this on a previous podcast. He's a Browns fan, God help him. And I asked him, I said, what's worse for a fan? 7-8 years back when you went 1-31 in 2 seasons and you knew you were bad, or right now where you have a good roster but have a quarterback that's with an immovable contract and you're not winning games because of him. I just think for Cleveland, at some point, you have to make a decision and say, look, our team is too good, too talented, too much potential to leave in this guy at quarterback, whether or not you have to keep him for 3 years or not. I just think at some point you have to make a decision on that. And if you're Kevin Stefanski, just for his own sake, to save himself with the locker room, as much as I'm sure the players understand that he's not the reason that Deshaun has to stay in, and I think it's probably a Jimmy Haslam thing. I don't think it's an Andrew Berry thing. You still have to have guts, I'm sure, as a head coach to go in there and say, you know what, guys, I know our owner's saying one thing, and at the risk of being fired, I got to make a decision that's worth it for our team. And Jonathan, the way I just see it right now is, even with all the talent you have, you're not winning with Deshaun.
Yeah, I don't think you're winning with Deshaun. The issue that I have is that I don't think you're winning with very much of anyone. Everybody's going to want to say, hey, change your quarterback, give Jameis a shot, throw him back there behind no offensive line and let him run around and do his Jameis magic for maybe a week or two, maybe win you a game or two before you regress back to the mean, which is that you're not a very good football team this year, and you haven't played very good football this year. So even if you bench Deshaun and you get a spark for a week or two, I don't see it changing the course of your season. You might make a couple fans happy for a split second, but it just doesn't seem like a salvageable situation this season in Cleveland for me. And it has to suck being Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year, and you're presumably and from what everyone else can see from the outside looking in, being hamstrung by your ownership to kind of keep doing something that you don't even believe is for the best of your team, but you have to go out in press conferences and say that it is every week. Yeah, it's a tough situation over there.
Is Nick Chubb enough to help this team?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think Chubb is not going to come back into this game and rush for 120 yards. I mean, coming back from that knee surgery, I mean, I got a coach and a former player. You guys can, push back on me if I'm wrong, but I just don't see him being able to put that much pressure on his knee again. Or at least right away.
If he's ready, he's ready. He's a superhuman to come back from what he's come back. But what it does is maybe it puts another guy in the box.
Yeah.
And
because the run game's been awful this year.
Creates a one-on-one. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Deshaun throws a couple slants because there's a window there because there's a guy in the backfield.
Yeah.
So, stranger things have happened. And I don't think Cincinnati's a great football team.
No. I look at it this way. When you watch a Stefanski press conference, I just want to be like, blink twice if you've been kidnapped, because he just looks like, I think it is Haslam forcing the issue, but I figured it out. All right, listen, I want to beat up on the Browns any chance I get. Haslam's playing chess, not checkers, because if he does put in Winston, there is a chance to win a game or two. But you keep Deshaun in, just go ahead, lose the rest of the season, get the number 1 overall pick, and pick your quarterback for next year. So listen, I got it. Haslam's playing chess, not checkers, guys.
I look at that situation and I'm thinking to myself, could you imagine having, and I'm sure Wayne's going to love this name, a Shedeur Sanders in your locker room with Deshaun Watson?
Exactly what I was thinking.
That's even worse. That's even worse.
Wait a minute. Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders.
I should caveat. Head coach Deion Sanders.
You're getting a dome. Deion doesn't want to be out there. So they aren't for Shedeur and Deion the package deal. There's a dome that has to be built.
If you think they are going to pull the meanest Eli Manning and say Shedeur's not going to Cleveland, if you think because Deion's got a list in his head of places where he wants Shedeur to go already. If you think Cleveland, Ohio is on that list, man.
Listen, as somebody who was born and raised outside of Pittsburgh, I would love to watch Shedeur keep blowing up the Browns.
I mean, look, Brook Park's got to be nice. 2 months out of the year, right? I'm sure it's a great place to live. He could have a great mansion. Brook Park.
Hey, man.
It doesn't even sound like a real place.
No, that sounds like a
place. Or is it a park, or is there a brook running through the park?
That's where you take your family for picnics.
Brook Park.
That's where you go. That's where you go if you have a son or daughter that's going to homecoming, and there's like one spot to take pictures. You have like a gazebo in the background, some trees,
book weddings.
Describing my hometown, okay?
When I think Brook Park, I think Case Western Reserve, not Dog Pound. Right. What are we selling here?
But don't you worry, folks. Cleveland's totally going to have the best facility and complex, and it will not be a problem at all getting planes and jets to and from the Cleveland International Airport, which may or may not be 35 miles outside of the city to begin with. Yeah. Don't you worry.
All right, back to the game, because I do want to throw a point in Coach Bradford's way. This is a crazy stat I saw earlier today. Burrow has been in the He's been in the league 4 years now? 5 years maybe? has never won a game in Cleveland.
There you go.
That's insane.
Never won a game in Cleveland. As bad as Cleveland has been over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and as good as Burrow has played, he has never gone into Cleveland and won.
And you want to take him out of that stadium and put him in a nice shiny dome.
Right. Exactly.
Cincinnati does. Let's pick the game. Wayne's got Cleveland winning. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win. Nick, you've got to be the tiebreaker here, or maybe Jonathan's going to even it up. Who knows?
Geez, this is so
Joe
tough.
Burrow has never won in Cleveland.
And their defense is so
Records are meant
bad.
to be broken.
Their defense is so bad.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Pull the trigger.
All right, I pulled it. I'm in. It's Browns by 3 because
peer pressure.
I think it is. It's 100%. But here's why. This is a get-right game for Watson. This is not as much about the Bengals offense as it is about the Bengals defense. Their defense is bottom of the league bad. And Burrow can play, that offense can play to keep up. But if Watson can, or if Chubb relieves that pressure from Watson and Watson can get some of those dump offs to Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy and Njoku for a touchdown, yeah, I do see a pathway where Cleveland can win by 3.
Hang on, Jonathan. Wait a second. I want to see what this thing does. That's what I should have done when Nick was talking. Now I know for next time. All right, Jonathan, make your pick.
Yeah, I see it. I don't.
All right.
I don't see it at all. You might get like a strong half out of Deshaun Watson where he looks like a competent football player and he like a competent football team. But Cincinnati offensively puts too much pressure on the Browns defense. They can score, and I don't even see it being close.
I will give credit though to Cleveland's defense. They tend to play Cincinnati well. I do think the Bengals offensive line is horrific, and I think that may be to Wayne's point where they're not that great of a team. I am concerned where that is when it comes to the offensive line standpoint. By the way, if I were to tell you going into the season that Cleveland and Cincinnati would meet in week number 7 and they would both have a record under 500 with a combined 3 wins, I mean, could you imagine that?
You would have been about half, right? Because you picked Cincinnati not to make the playoffs.
I did. I said 7 and 10.
I said the same, but I picked Cleveland to win the division.
I think we should put a dozen of those Engine House 39 wings on this.
Ooh, I like
this
this.
side's going with Cleveland.
I like this.
It's a bet. It's a bet.
I'm in.
AI, clip that. To Pittsburgh, Steelers and Jets on Sunday Night Football. As we will close out the show with this, let's chat about the quarterback situation, which has not officially been named, but I think we all know it's going to be Russell Wilson starting on Sunday night. And our panel here has had some thoughts as to the quarterback decision in Pittsburgh. And I know Justin Fields came out today and said, well, I just haven't been playing very well and, whatever. And I still gotta be better. But, if you were to tell me coming into a season that in week 7, the Steelers quarterback, whoever was starting, would have 10 total touchdowns and 1 pick, throw for almost 1,200 yards and not be the reason why their offense is struggling and they're 4-2, I'd have signed up for that in about 30 seconds. Guys, your thoughts? I don't get it. I don't understand what the point of it is, other than you want the expertise maybe of the 30-plus-year-old quarterback. Like, why Russ now? When you've coached before plenty, do you have any thoughts on that? I can't get it.
Yeah, I'm me. I am a big believer in Justin Fields. So I wanted to trade Lamar Jackson for Justin.
I know
one time. So I know he thought.
Well, at this point, Justin might still be on the table.
But it's a great point. I mean, you know that Tomlin has a much larger voice in his organization than Stefanski has in his. So I don't know if this is an ownership thing, but you did bring in, the guy and you're paying him. I'm torn. Pittsburgh can win ugly. Pittsburgh does not need an elite quarterback, to win with the defense they have and the style of play they have. So to me, what is this going to do? Is this going to change their style of play on offense? Because if it changes their style of play on offense, I think that hurts them.
I think it has to. Russ isn't getting out of the pocket in some of those scrambles.
So does it change it in a good way? I mean, is it more pocket play action, max protect, those types of things? Russ throws a heck of a deep ball.
Yeah.
But, and I look at it this way. what does Nick Chubb coming into a locker room do for Cleveland? Energizes it? What does Russell Wilson taking Justin Fields out? Does it suck the air out? I mean, the kid has played well, and there's some relationships in there. So that's a unique dynamic, I think.
And the team was rallying around him, right? I mean, how much did you hear out of the locker room, whether it's from John Leidick or others, that, hey, like, this is a guy that the team molded around and cared about and wanted to succeed. And now, like, I just think that from my point of view, I think this does two things. Number one, and I've talked about, Jonathan, you and I have had these conversations, there's nothing about Justin Fields, short of the turnovers, that you could gain from putting Russell Wilson in there. You lose mobility, you lose arm strength. Maybe it's comparable to accuracy, but one turnover in 6 games, to me, that was the really big question mark that I had coming into the year. He hasn't made those. And the other thing I would say too is, do you ever now have the ability to go back to Justin? Or is that just something that'll rattle his confidence so much that if you go back to him, he'll just never be the same again?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking. It's like, if you want to bench him, how do you possibly bring him back into the fold if this experiment with Russ doesn't work out? Because now you're bringing your quarterback back that you basically turned your back on and said, hey, we know you've been playing decently well for the first 6 weeks of the season, but we're going to go another direction anyway. And now you're saying, psych, nah, we need you again. I've actually been a part of a situation like this before, and I'm going to leave everything out of it. But I've been in that situation before and seen it play out at the quarterback position. And when you need the guy that you benched originally, 9 times out of 10, he's not even going to want that position because he knows he wasn't your first choice.
Yeah.
And he's not going to play very well in that situation because he knows he wasn't your first choice.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor at all of taking a guy's job from him that doesn't play himself out of that role. I've been standing firm on the fact that it's Justin Fields' job to lose, and until he plays himself out of that position, he should be the starter. I don't think he's done anything to play himself out of that position. In fact, he has them sitting prettier than most people expected them at this point in the season. I don't understand it. I don't get it. And you better hope that it works, and you better hope that Russ lights it up. Like, you can't go back.
4-2 sitting at top of the division, and you're going to change your quarterback. I mean, how many? There's not many.
Cleveland?
Yeah, exactly. There's not many teams in the league that are going to make that call. And with Fields, I think that Fields' mentality has been great. I love the quote that he had today whenever he found out, when they interviewed him after practice. He said, I mean, I don't think I've played good enough. If I'm being real with you, if I'm being real with myself, I think if I did play well enough, I don't think there would be any sort of who should be playing and who should not. So I think, to your point, Jay, I think that if he is called upon to come back, if they do decide to go to Russ, and to be honest with you, I don't think they are going to go to Russ. Tomlin has never said we are going this direction. I wouldn't be surprised, but I do
taking first team reps.
Yeah, but I do think there's a better than average chance that Fields still starts this game. The problem I have with bringing Russ in at this point is, what is Russ bringing you that Fields is not? And that's the floor is maybe the same, but you don't have the ceiling that Justin Fields is going to bring you. Russ can heave the ball downfield. But the problem with the Steelers offense is not Fields and his inability to heave the ball downfield. It's that they don't have anybody down the field to catch the ball. Pickens, Mr. Always hit that beat button open, is never, I don't know. He's maybe always open, but he's never catching the ball. It can be a highlight pass. He's gonna catch that toe tap on the sidelines. It hits him right in the bread basket 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and he fumbles it. It's like the problem is not Fields. The problem is that receiving crew. And if by making the switch to Russell Wilson is not going to fix that hole in the offense.
Everyone wants to talk about numbers, right? So let me throw some numbers out there with you. Kenny Pickett in 2 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers had a grand total of passing touchdowns of 13. Justin Fields already has 10 total touchdowns in 6 games with Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson last year, right? Could argue the best year of his career outside of his Super Bowl year at Seattle, had 26 touchdowns in 15 games. If Justin Fields were to continue on this pace, he would have just shy of 30. So again, from a numbers game, it doesn't make sense. From a talent perspective, it doesn't make sense. And I just, the other thing you have to consider too is the scenario in which you are playing him. Sunday Night Football against the Jets. You got a top 5 defense in the league. I mean, unless your plan is that you're feeding Wilson to the wolves, so that Fields has to be your starter, I just don't think this is the appropriate setting to do it. You get the Giants home next week on a Monday night. If you're going to do it then do it then. Don't do it against the top 5 defense that likely will eat him alive. And again, the other thing I factor in too, and you guys know this as well as I do, Nick, probably you more than anybody being a Steeler fan. If Wilson goes out there and has a bad first quarter, that stadium is going to throw a riot when the second quarter opens.
Absolutely. Every time he touches the field.
Wayne, you're smiling. You got thoughts?
You got to sell tickets. It's Sunday Night Football. It's Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
does that sell more than Fields? I don't
I'm
know.
just being the market.
NBC is clamoring over there.
I don't know what Pittsburgh's thinking. You know, are they thinking, you know, boy, we need a Ben Roethlisberger? Are we longing for that? Well, you're not getting that in Russell Wilson.
No.
You know, and you know, he may have had a great year last year, touchdown wise in Denver, but you know, didn't get along with Peyton. And this might be more about Arthur Smith, who is a I formation play action. This might be Russell Wilson is a better fit for Arthur Smith, than Justin Fields. Because let's take this. Justin Fields is not a pro style quarterback. Right. Now you can train him to be a pro style quarterback, but he's a gun. Ohio, you know, Russell Wilson is a Wisconsin, get under center, put the ball in the belly, drop it out, great ball fakes, those types of things. That's a Pittsburgh quarterback.
Yeah.
So style points and that type, but does he have enough juice to get the ball fake and get it out and do those particular things? So it's a style fit, but is there anything in that?
Well, the offensive line has holes. So what's Russ going to do waiting for his receivers to get open? Because he's not going to get out of that pocket.
That's where that play action.
Yeah.
You know, those 2 big tight ends, those 3 big tight ends, 12 personnel, 13 personnel.
Yeah.
Let's stick it in inside zone, man, protect, throw double post.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only thing I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Zach Frazier out.
It'd be very interesting to chart how many snaps are under center Sunday night versus in the gun.
Yeah, and we'll have to do that again too, because to your point, Wayne, it potentially changes Arthur Smith's offense. Even if it is more to the liking of what Arthur wants, you lose that mobile aspect of things. And so you're going to have to be timing proficient if you're Russell Wilson when you drop back and you do play action passes on Sunday night. Big game, of course, for the Jets. It's a must-win for them. You lose your 2-5 for Pittsburgh. You got to keep pace with Baltimore at 4-2. Start with you, Jonathan. Who's winning, Steelers or Jets?
Ooh, this is a tough one because you got A-Rod reunited with this guy. He was staying at his house already.
Yeah.
He made an
Did you see the
McAfee show?
I love the McAfee interview where he like creeps over his shoulder. It was like a wrestling promo. He's like, "Guess who's back?"
It's McAfee's world. We're all living pain right now.
He's already got his Jets colored cleats. Like it was already.
And it's amazing. His injury has miraculously healed.
Man,
I don't know how that works.
Modern medicine, man. I tell you. But man, like. That's going to be a connection, and it's going to be interesting to see how early they can get Adams into the fold and into that playbook. But that offense is going to be a different level. I feel like adding a receiver like that and someone who already has chemistry with Rodgers. If they start Russ, I'm going with the Jets. I'm going with the Jets in this one. And score-wise, I would say 28-17.
Yeah, that's double-digit pick. I mean, Devontae, we didn't even get to that with the Jets. It's an interesting pick from Jonathan. Wayne, I'll give you the floor. Steelers, Jets.
Steelers do not lose a Sunday night game. Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson don't make it through the game. Both leave the game. So, J.J. Watt.
Yeah, by injury or
by injury?
Yeah,
by injury. Both.
Wow.
Both are out by injury.
So you're saying Quinn Williams is going to come off the edge and just tear somebody apart, and then T.J. Watt's going to get a strip sack.
So it's 12-9 and a battle of field goals.
That would be about the most Jets thing ever, to trade for Devontae Adams only to lose your starting quarterback.
It's happening. It's happening. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm scared to death.
All right, Nick. I don't know how you can top that.
I'm half with you. I feel like this side of the table, we've been so lock sync this whole time. The Steelers, I don't think they have enough to get out of this game. And I do think Russ starts. I absolutely can see Russ going down with some, the calf strain isn't ready yet. But by then they're already down too much. I think this is where I separate. Rodgers is going to go nuclear in this game. I think he's got his buddy Devontae Adams back. He's got rid of the coach that he, rumored didn't necessarily gel with very well. I think this is a Rodgers Sunday night, all about him kind of game, and I think he's going to go nuclear, and I think they win by 10.
The Jets or the Steelers?
Jets.
I think it's going to be. I'm actually going the opposite of what both of you have said in terms of your game strategy. Wayne, you mentioned low scoring. I just think for both teams, neither squad's going to be able to get out of their own way. All the talk about Wilson starting in Pittsburgh, I think if he does start, he's rusty. I think it's going to take at least a game or two for Rodgers and Adams to get going. And again, keep in mind too, Pittsburgh's defense does not allow, for the most part, those massive, huge, deep plays. They will allow third down conversions, which I think is going to be a big part of this game. But at the end of the day, I do think that it comes down to which defense gets off the field first. I'm sorry. If Russell Wilson's the starting quarterback, I do not trust this team to play from behind. I don't think that they're going to be able to score more than 20 points. By the end of the week, I'm going to owe Wayne about 17 orders of wings. But I think it's the Jets. I think they're going to win this football game. I'll tell you what, I'll caveat it with this. If Justin Fields is the starter, I like Pittsburgh in the game. I really think it literally comes down to the quarterback and the ability to extend plays against pressure. Keep in mind, Pittsburgh down Zach Frazier this week. Ryan McCollum's going to have to start. It's going to be their fifth different starting offensive line combo in 7 games. And so I think at the end of the day, if Fields is healthy, he's able to play, and he's the starter, I think Pittsburgh's going to win this game. If not, I'm going to take the Jets. And so I think Russ is going to start. I go Jets. I'm going to go 23-17. New York gets the win. And Wayne, you can go ahead and pick your wing flavors here. What's your favorite?
What's my favorite? Oh, man. I like Nashville Hot, which are tremendous.
That's a good one.
And then, so Nashville Hot are a great wing. Maybe, I love buffalo wings, but a Nashville Hot. And then, I'm also got the dreads over there. Jamaican jerk chicken wings are fantastic. If you can get a really good Jamaican jerk chicken.
Yeah. I never saw you being a spicy wing guy, but I've been proven wrong before.
The hotter the better.
Man.
The hotter the better. Am
I going to have to eat these too if I lose these games?
You do whatever you want.
No, you pick the flavor.
I can't. I mean, I'm just making things.
The hotter they are, the more beer you drink.
I don't drink either.
Well, we'll get you a nice tall glass.
This is gonna be a rough Monday for us. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it on your show, Nick. If I have to do this Sunday night after the game, oh gosh, it's gonna be.
Oh, you'll be there.
So are we ever gonna do a podcast during the game, like a Sunday night game?
Stay tuned. We might.
Wait, 2 minutes of the half.
You know what? If I'm being honest, I'm not opposed to it. What do you got going?
Well,
we'll figure it out.
I'm off next week. We don't have a game. I'm looking for. I told my wife tonight. She goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to my third job." She goes, "You're going to your third job."
And that's the difference between us crazies in the room and others. Others get a week off and they're like, freedom. We get a week off and we're like, what can I do to do? That's just us, man. Great stuff again tonight. What an episode. What a week of previews. Of course, tomorrow night will be our live show again, 10 o'clock, YouTube, X, Facebook, and Twitch. It'll be High School Football Week 9 reactions. Again, want to thank as well Mark Iser at Millennium Sound for hosting us here. We hope to be back here in future weeks, trying some different things out, but an actual studio setting. It's nice to be able to sit, look across the room, and see the guys who are helping us with the podcast network, and we hope you enjoyed it as well. Let us know in the comments, subscribe to our network, wherever you may be watching, however you may be taking in this podcast. So we will see you all tomorrow. Make sure to make it a great weekend. Enjoy high school football. Enjoy the NFL. And stay tuned for next week when I'm on the air paying for Wayne's Wings and potentially getting myself dealt with spicy things as well. See you guys, everyone, later. What a great show.